Okay, so basically in this video what I wanted to show you is in the event that you have a floor loom and it has a sectional. When I started to learn how to weave, I was looking for YouTube videos with sectionals. There were not a lot out there. So you know, a lot of it is kind of self-taught. Also with the help of my friend who is also self-taught. She helped guide me along the way. The one thing that is slightly different when you warp the loom, I have a video on how to use the warping board. For example, if you're using least sticks and you need to actually make that cross. So you would use that obviously on a floor loom that does not have a sectional. You'd use that on a table loom, for example. But in the event that you are wanting to use a sectional, you actually don't need to make that cross. So it's a lot simpler because you're not using least sticks, okay? So I'm going to just do one section of the sectional to show you. Hi, Neelix. My cat has arrived. So I'm going to show you one section of the sectional to complete so that you understand basically you know, how to put it together. All right. The blanket I'm doing another hospice blanket. It's going to yes, sweetie pie. It's going to have 8 EPI, so ends per inch. So each sectional section, which is 1 inch wide, is going to have 8 strands of yarn in it. Okay. I'm using another Tom Knisley pattern from the baby blanket book. Okay. The one this time is called for a queen and for a king, I believe it's called. It's on page 50. I've changed, obviously. He uses cotton. I'm using obviously acrylic for the actual blanket. Okay. So again, same thing as we would always do. Okay. So I've got my ball of yarn in my wonderful coffee can. Okay. So it's not rolling all over the floor, especially with my boy Neelix there. He loves to play with the yarn there. So I'm gonna make my slip knot. I also have a video on how to make a slip knot. Okay. I'm gonna put it on my knot. I've already put the guide thread through, so I need, because my hospice blanket is going to be 60 inches long, basically, I need my warp length I've calculated to be 2.3 yards that I need. Okay, so literally I need 8 of these. Okay, so I'm just going to follow. All right, go back here. I'm going to go around, go all the way back, and because it's the correct length. All right, I literally need 8, okay? So I'm just going to do that. All right, let's push these in. Okay, so let's I think I've done too many here, but let's check. Okay, so let me check here. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Way too many, so I need to take off one set here. All right, let me just check again. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so that's the 8 that I need there. All right, so you'll notice obviously there's no cross. I am going to put in, as I've done before, I cut my little ends of waste yarn there, and I'm just going to put in a couple, all right, to keep things organized. And again, I don't want the guide thread obviously in there, so I'm going to put one here. And I usually, as I said, I usually do 1 per row, okay? So I'm going to put one over here as well, okay? So basically, I'm going to grab my scissors. I'm going to cut this end basically here, so that's the same length, okay? Let that stay there, all right? I'm going to pull this off. Now, because this is so short, I don't need to do a chain. Obviously, if you have a much longer warp, you're going to want to do the chain, which I've shown in a previous video, okay? Because these are all the correct length, I do need to cut it at this end, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it right here, okay? I'm going to grab it, take it off the loom, okay? And then basically, all right, you're going to notice I have some ends that are longer because, again, I had the slip knot. Remember, again, if you have knots as you're going through, you would want to, you know, kind of make the knots at this end so it doesn't matter. I'm going to go to the very end, and I'm going to actually make 1 knot at the end here, okay? And I'll show you the purpose of that shortly. Okay, so let me just pull that through. the knot as close as possible to the end there, okay? So like that, for example. I'm not sure if that's, okay, does that help you? Yeah, okay. So as short as possible, I'd probably cut these little ends off here to try and make it, yeah. So I've cut the ends off so that they're not dangling. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it over to the sectional. Now usually what I do is I'll do like 5 or 6 of these, for example. Again, always following my threading pattern, because the entire blanket I've decided to do kind of a checkered pattern this time. So not every sectional will be the exact same color. There may be colors mixed within there that I actually have to check every 8. So what you may want to do, for example, is in the pattern, I've shown you how I do my threading. I basically put through you know, harness number 1, harness number 2, etc. on there, and I usually highlight what is what color of yarn. And so basically I'll, you know, put a little tick after every 8 so that I know that this should be in this bunch of the sectional. Okay? And I can show that later on when we get on to the actual loom. All right? So let's move over to the loom and continue on. Okay, so we're now at my loom. This basically here is a sectional. I have a 45-inch loom, so you're going to basically have each one of these is 1 inch long. You can get sectionals that are 2 inches long, 2 inches for each section. Mine, as I said, is 1 inch. So I know that my blanket is going to be 28 inches. So you want to center it obviously on the loom. I have put some painter's tape, basically, to actually know where the center one is. So because it's 28, I'm going to go 14 this way, 14 that way, and I'll know where to start. Now you see basically over here, I've done 2 sets of sectionals, okay? And I usually put them in the order that I need. I start, obviously I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start at number 1 and I'm going to work my way across. Obviously if you're left-handed, you may want to work obviously the other way if that's easier for you as well. But basically the first 4 sections are going to be, excuse me, identical. Actually, sorry, the first 4 sections are going to be identical colors, and then there's going to be a mixture of color later on according to the threading count. Okay, so as you can see, basically from the picture I'm showing you right here, this is the threading, and then you can see that with each section you've got, I've put a tick at the end for every 8 threads that I'm going to have, and then which is basically at the end of the row for the beige threads, and then I'm getting into, you know, your black and your cream and your the red threads that I'm going to be using as part of the blanket as well. Okay, so let's start looking. Basically, is that the first thing you want to look at is these threads. They do not come, these threads do not actually come with your sectional. Well, they didn't with mine. You're basically, the person, the previous owner had put these on. I'm actually thinking of replacing them. I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, so basically, let's take a look here at this string right here. It's just a nylon string. I'll show you how to attach it to the bar afterwards, okay? But I'm thinking of replacing all of these because when you do finally decide that you're going to be threading the heddles and slaying the reeds, etc., you're going to undo the section from here. It's going to go over the back beam. Make sure it's always going over the back beam. I did the mistake of passing that, and of course I couldn't figure out why my tension was not working. But when you go to the back beam, right, that knot that I made on the warp board, it's going to be attached here, and I'll show you how in a moment. And this is as far as it could possibly go, okay? So, actually, sorry. So if I go as max, this is the maximum. So that means that this section from here to the heddles, all the area of the harnesses, and a little bit before the harness where the shed starts to get too small that you just can't use it anymore, all of that is automatically waste. And that's why when you're doing your calculations, you're calculating a certain amount of waste, and that's going to change depending on the person. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to replace probably these down the road when I have some time. And I would like to make sure that the loop comes closer to the heddles, because that way I'm not using this waste. And again, when you're timesing it over, 400 threads or how many threads you've got, that is a lot of material that ends up getting wasted that doesn't necessarily need to be wasted. When you're starting off as a beginner weaver, I wouldn't worry too much about the waste. You're going to waste a lot. Just accept that. As you get more comfortable with weaving, then you'll know where you can shorten things and reduce your waste. But for now, that's not the big worry when you're starting to weave. Okay? I'm going to change the camera angle. I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you the knots that you need to do in order to add these threads should you wish to, or actually start the actual the actual warp threads and put them onto your sectional. But let's say, for example, I wanted to replace these threads at some point, like I had mentioned. Okay, what would I do? All right. So basically, if you actually take a look at it, I'm going to take this off. Okay, it's just like kind of like a slip knot type of thing. So I would measure the amount that I would need. Okay, I would make sure that I do a secure knot at the end. Okay, so basically it's a loop. All right. I'm going to put it through. All right, downwards. All right, like this. All right. I'm just going to open up the hole and put this basically through, all right? When I put it through, it's going to catch. It is now secure. I can move it, but you want to make sure that you have one of these threads for each of the inches on your sectional that you have, okay? Now, I have like all 45 done because sometimes I use all 45 inches, but if you're only ever using no more than 28, well, then, you do the appropriate amount that you need for that. The other thing that you need to note is that you want to take the brake off of your floor loom so that this rotates, okay, quite easily and nicely. Mine's a little on the squeaky side, but that's okay. All right. So now let's take a look at, all right, I'm going to take my first sectional, warping sectional here, all right, and I want to attach it. So I've got to count 14 over, as I said. So hold on, I'm just going to make that over here, okay. So I've got 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, okay? So this is the one that I want to use, all right? So what we need in order to attach it is we need a larkheads knot. The larkheads knot, again, fancy names, is that it's very easily made. So you're going to put your fingers through like this. You're going to wrap them around the outside, okay, of the string. And when you wrap them around outside the string, you're basically holding them to pull them through this loop. So you're going to basically do this, okay? When you do that, you'll notice, okay, that it's securing around my finger. Well, we want it to actually secure around that knotted part that we took off the warp board. Okay, so I'm going to basically, let's do it again just to show you. All right, so larkheads knot on the outside. I'm going to bring them together. I'm pulling this through, and then I'm just going to keep the hole open, and I'm going to take my section of the sectional here. I'm going to put the knot through it, okay? And there we go, it's secure, okay? And now I have to wrap it around. So when I actually end up wrapping it around, I need to make sure that the tension is even. I don't want to be loose. It's got to be, you're not pulling it as tight as you possibly can, but you want it to be taut. And you want to make sure that obviously that tension is the same throughout and for everything that you go through. So I'm going to start, all right, it's going to wrap, it's going to wrap, it's going to wrap. Now you'll notice that the problem with this is that this hole, okay, the way I've got this done is that basically when it comes through, this knot is actually coming onto the wood, and it should really end up in one of these areas here, because if it ended up in one of these areas here, it's not going to affect the tension, okay? And because it's in here, because it's on top, and again, that's because of the length of my stuff that I do need to fix, okay? And so hold on a sec here. I'm just going to, remember we put some ties. So I'm going to take out the tie, all right? And again, the more ties you put in, the more you're going to have to take out. But again, if it's a longer warp, you don't want things to get all scraggly. So what I end up doing is I end up just kind of combing my fingers through, okay? And then I will hold it a certain length away, all right? And you want to try and keep them as straight as possible, all right? So I'm going to go through, all right? I'm going to continue going through. I'm going to comb through some more. Again, always pulling at the same level of tension, all right? Now, do you notice here, because this lump is on the wood, all right, I'm going to put I'm going to put the threads around it, okay? But again, if the threads end up going on top of it, it's going to shorten some of the threads and make some of the threads a little bit longer. So again, not perfect if you're really particular about the tension. I haven't found that it's affected my stuff dramatically, but again, over time, if you have a very long warp, it definitely can do that. So when I do readjust these in the future, I'm going to make sure that when I actually put it through, that it does end up in one of these kind of crevices, the knot, because it'll make my life a lot simpler, okay? But again, I'm just going to keep going through. Now make sure when you're going through, it's very easy for it to, let's say, for example, go some in the middle, some on either side. You don't want that. You want to make sure that you're watching that everything is staying at this inch, okay, in this section. All right, going to comb through some more. Put it through. Again, I've gotten to the hole, gonna see if I can go around it to try and keep it as flat as I possibly can. Comb some more. Oh, I got to my next little thing there. Okay. All right. Again. All right. All right. So do you notice there, right, when I cut off at the very end, okay, I cut them all off at the same point, right? But some of them all of a sudden are longer. So this has affected, okay? So basically, when I am taking this, putting it through the heddles and all that, some of this is going to be waste because they all have to, finish off obviously at the same amount on the other end, right? So again, it is something that I do want to fix down the road. So what I use basically is I use painter's tape, okay? And, all right, I find painter's tape doesn't leave an adhesive on the material, okay? So and that's the trick that my friend gave me. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm bringing this here, all right? I'm doing the last section. Let's see if I can bring it around here, okay? And I'm going to use the painter's tape, and I'm going to literally just tape it there. It's not going to stay taped for very long, okay, because at some point, as I said, I will be going on to the next stage, all right? So now let's do the second one exactly the same way, all right? So I'm taking the second one here. Let's do it again. Let's rotate. There we go. We're going to do our lark heads knot, okay? So there, we're going to take it, make our little loopy there, put our little... And again, if you guys have tips that I'm not aware of, because again, I've only been doing this for a couple of years, by all means, please leave me information in the comment section below. Now you might be asking, this is only a 2.3 yard warp. What if you have like a 16 yard warp, right? You want to be doing this for, let's say, 45 inches. This is ridiculous. There is something that you can buy called a spool rack. And so basically on that spool rack, it's a rack literally with a whole bunch of metal bars on it. You put the number of spools. So let's say, for example, this is, I've got 8 threads per inch here on this one. 8 ends per inch. And so what I would have is that I would, on those bobbins, I would wind enough that I need to go onto the sectional. And there would be 8 bobbins that have those threads, and it would go through something called a tension box that basically would make sure it maintained the tension, and then I would be turning this and it would go on. So you could do one section. Again, you'd only be doing 1 inch at a time, but again, it might be a little bit less troublesome than the way that I'm showing you here. Okay. So again, I'm going to take my painter's tape, I'm going to put it across, all right? Now, let's pretend I've done all 28 inches, and let's say I wanted to go back and I wanted to actually start using this, okay? So again, I would just literally detach that, okay? You want to wind a certain amount off that is going to allow you basically to go through to the end, okay? So in my case, when I unwind this, I unwind it 3 times around, because by unwinding it 3 times around, it gives me enough to get through the heddles, and also enough to get through for slaying the reed. Oh, let me lift this up here. Sorry. So what I would end up doing is I would take the undo this. I unwrap it 3 rounds for me. That's what I've got to do, and I bring it obviously over, okay? And then I can check how far it will actually go. So if I were to, let's move the beater there, okay? So let's say I undo this one here, okay? I'm going to go around 3 times, so 1, all right, 2, and 3. And when I do, I bring it back up through the top on top here, okay? Obviously I take off my tape, okay? And I'll check to make sure, all right, that the length is correct. All right? So when I go through, it's giving me lots of room there. Okay? Again, I might be able to do one less wind, but in my case, it doesn't necessarily work out that way. When you do decide to start doing the heddles and the slay the reed, you want to make sure that your threads are coming up fairly straight. You don't want them all mixed up. Also, if it's multicolored, okay, because some of the sections further down will be multicolored, make sure that your colors are in the proper order when they're going through the heddle as well. Okay? And I think that about sums it up there. So I'm hoping that that was helped you out, and have yourself a great day.